Hey everyone, on this episode of Teeter Talks, I had such a wonderful time speaking to an old friend of mine, Hanen Nanaa. I met her several years ago when I filmed a series for CBC called The Dream Team. And she was a young Syrian refugee entrepreneur who was looking to build a collective to bring marginalized groups together to connect and have important conversation. She has done incredible work since then. I've had so much fun following her journey and talking to her on this episode and learning her story of fleeing her home country from war to Canada to be safe, not knowing what to expect, but then seeing the life that she's built here around serving people and settling in as a really proud Canadian has been so inspiring. You are really going to enjoy this episode. Please enjoy Hanen Nanaa. Hello, Hanen. How are you?
Hi, Marissa. I'm good. How are you?
I'm really good. It is so nice to see you. It has been a few years since we have connected.
Yes, and we had a very interesting connection, and I'm really looking forward to continue the conversations today.
Yes. Speaking of an interesting connection, you're right. We both met on the set for a TV show. My first TV show, your first
My
TV
first.
show. Yes. And it was my first day of recording because I recorded 3 episodes. So it was the CBC series, The Dream Team,
Mhm.
where a group of experts, so myself, Manjeet Minhas, and another subject matter expert would support entrepreneurs in pursuing their dreams and getting their businesses established. And you were there because you were a young entrepreneur and you had just established the BAM Collective, which we'll talk all about. And I met you my first day on set of my first episode on my
Wow.
first TV show. And it was crazy. Do you remember that?
I do remember, and now I'm actually surprised that it's your first because you did so well. And I was like, she's such a natural speaker. I felt so connected to you, and I remember I had also like an emotional moment. And I think when
Oh,
we were recording,
mhm.
you just made me feel like safe, but also more comfortable to talk about my journey and the business and everything. So yeah, definitely, I remember that moment, and it was very interesting.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. I have not forgotten you. You made such an impact on me. I remember saying on that show in one of the clips that I would just follow you wherever you go because I just knew whatever you touched would turn to gold. You were just so committed and so lovely and just so inspiring. That was really an amazing experience being on that show. We also filmed it during COVID, which I sometimes forget about COVID. We had to do COVID testing beforehand. We had to wear masks between takes, all the distancing, of course. But what a beautiful thing to come out of such a crazy time. And I've followed your journey over the last few years on LinkedIn, and you have just not stopped. You have been everywhere on stages, doing amazing things, doing incredible things with government and in your school and in your work and in your volunteerism. You're just exceptional. I feel like you've accomplished more in your short lifetime than most people do and in their entire lifetime. And in fact, you are a refugee to Canada from Syria,
Mhm.
and you have just settled in like a very cozy, comfy Canadian very quickly.
Yeah. Yes. It was very short, smooth, and sweet, but it was challenging for sure.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. I know you and I didn't get a chance to deep dive too much on that. I know we talked a little bit yesterday in preparation for this call because I was so curious. Not everybody's comfortable talking about their stories and their journeys, but I'd like to go back and talk about, well, let's start by talking about you as a child. What was life like growing up in Syria as a child?
Sure. First, thank you so much for this lovely introduction. I'm so happy that we're having this conversation
Yes.
today. I grew up in Aleppo in Syria, and I think whenever I get asked about my childhood, I always say that I had a very typical childhood. Growing up with loving parents, and at that time 6 siblings. Now we're 7, so
I
very
can't
big.
believe you have 7 siblings. That's amazing.
Yeah, very big
Incredible.
family, and
Yeah.
spending time mostly with friends at school and being at home and studying, and like being in a very loving family. I think I always reflect and say I didn't imagine that a war would break out in my country, and then I would escape at a young age, and then be in where I am now. But I remember also something from my childhood, that my parents were very community people, very community driven. And I think whenever someone asks me about my work now, I always reflect on my childhood, because that's how I grew.
Mhm.
I grew up in a household that always encouraged us to be in community.
Well, that apple didn't fall too far from the tree, because you clearly are, it's clearly blood that runs through your veins that comes from a very community centric family.
Yes.
And so you said you had a normal childhood, went to school, you had a big loving family. Tell me a little bit about what you wanted to be. I mean, you didn't imagine obviously the war and coming to Canada, but what did you want to be when you grew up? What were your big dreams?
It's very interesting, because I remember I wanted to, be in sciences and become a
Mm.
doctor. And now when you
Mm.
ask me, I'm like, of course not. Like, it just changed. And
Yep.
I think like our dreams and our goals change for sure. But I think, I remember, like, I worked in politics. I'm still involved in policy and in community. And sometimes I reflect, like, even though I had specific dream in mind, but now I reflect and I say, my dad always watched politics and always debated politics. It
Mm.
was very interesting, to reflect on that now at this age, and when I'm working, in politics and policy. So I think, yeah, it was definitely a different path, but I've become in a different path, but I still feel it's connected to how I grow and within my family as well.
It's so funny. I wanted to be a doctor when I grew up as well too. I signed up for all kind of pre-med courses at university and quickly changed all of them after the first week to business, which is the greatest decision I ever made, because I realized that I just wanted to help people, but I guess when I was young I didn't realize there was different ways to do that. I was like, "Oh, I'll be a doctor and I'll help people that
Mm,
way." And I have so much respect for doctors. It's so much work and such a commitment. Well, one of my best friends is a doctor, and I watch her and all that she does. But I found a different avenue to help people, and I think it's better suited for me. But that's funny, and it's funny how, again, like,
mm.
your father's political focus and community focus, it just comes to show how much kids absorb, even subconsciously. As
Yeah.
parents, they're watching us all the time. I love that expression. Kids are always picking up what's caught, not
Mm,
taught. So
mm.
they're just seeing and absorbing. So obviously it was kind of, within you somewhere to kind of end up where you ended up today, which is in such a great spot. So you're a teenager in Syria living a normal life, and then the war breaks out. Talk to me a little bit about that time, what you and your family went through, and ultimately what your journey looked like to come to Canada.
Um, yeah, like I think living in a war at that time as a youth, I'll say, it was very challenging,
Mhm.
because there is not too much I could do to support my family. It was very devastating. And I always say, the experience of living in a war is something I think nobody should live in. But the sad reality is that we still have, many people are in war zones. So it was very devastating. I think it was not safe, but also not sustainable. Like, I remember, and it comes back a lot even now, because I'm still consider myself like healing from that journey. I remember like, the displacement, like going from a region to region, from a place to place, like for more than a year. And I remember like I stayed with people that I've never met and I've never worked with and I've never talked to. So I feel like that was very unstable for me at that age. And I was very concerned about my family, even though I was very young, but I still
Mhm.
remember that I was very concerned, because at that time, my mom was diagnosed with cancer and hospitals were being bombed. So she wasn't able to get her chemo treatment, for example. And my dad had so much responsibility on his shoulder to bring all of us together. And, losing your home, it was destroyed. Losing your community, losing your friends, and losing your education, and losing the people that you loved was something very devastating to me. And I think at one point in 2012, my dad reached to the point that we're not safe. Like, there's still,
Mm.
bombing where we used to live. Killing is still happening, so we have to move. And that's where we basically fled the violence to Turkey, and we stayed there as refugees. And life in Turkey was very challenging to live as a refugee, and I think that was kind of not stable for us. So we were always looking for a place to feel safe and home. And then we heard about, through my volunteering work as well, we heard about the Canadian government program in 2015 to welcome thousands of Syrian refugees. I applied, and luckily we made it. And it's such a dream. Like I always say, a dream came true. We're grateful, like forever grateful, to be here in Canada.
It's so crazy because as Canadians, these are just not thoughts that cross our minds. These are just not things that we're even remotely prepared for. War and
Mm.
living in zones that are unsafety for us and our children, having our education taken away, having our livelihood taken away, having our homes destroyed. We're so fortunate. And as a mom, I can't even imagine,
Mm.
managing my family through that.
Yeah.
Uprooting my family, moving them around just for their survival. It just gives so much perspective. And I do think that, you and I had a good conversation about this. I mean, a lot of, this is a country where we open our doors to a lot of refugees, and refugees are obviously, refugee status is different than immigrant status.
Exactly.
Refugees are here because they really did not have a choice,
No.
right? You did not have a choice. I mean, God forbid, who knows what would have happened if you guys would have stayed in Syria. And I just look at the contributions you and your family have made since coming to Canada. It's, there just was no other option. It was just what had to happen. And I'm proud to live in a country where, and people have different thoughts on this and different views, but
Mm.
I really think that in the end, if we think as humans and as parents and as, people who care about our neighbors, which is one of the things you love most about this country, you've already said it to me multiple times when we were chatting. I just think that, this is a great thing that we can do for our refugee friends and family out there.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, I think I really like the you mentioned at the beginning. Refugees don't choose. Like most of the
No.
time, you have to like go anywhere that kind of be safe to you, but also make your family safe. And that was the case for me and to my family. And to be honest, like Canada was unknown to me. I had no idea what is Canada. I didn't know. Like it was not like a selection process. It was
Mm,
more, is it safe? Yes, we will go because we didn't have options. And I think coming to the unknown was very stressful, very strange. But
mm,
luckily, we were, I think from the first day I remember at the airport, I met Canadians, and it was just like we were overwhelmed with the support and the love and the kindness and looking after each other. And I think that's what made me feel not only proud about being Canadian, but also think about rebuilding my life, but giving back at the same time. So I think
mm.
showing kindness and understanding the human disasters that we go through is very important, even though sometimes it's hard to put things into perspective. But I think just learning from people, listening to their stories and their needs is very important, so we can all support each other to integrate, but also to all give back to this country.
It's so true. I mean, the giving back piece is really interesting. So, just on my
Mm.
last episode here of Teeter Talks, I interviewed Jim Estel, who he himself personally funded over 250 Syrian refugees to come to Canada during
Big
that
fan of
time.
Jen.
And, he was so focused on not just getting refugees here, but getting people back on their feet.
Yeah.
And he said, it was unbelievable because these individuals didn't just want to get back on their feet, but they wanted to give back. And I see that firsthand in the work I do with different programs in this community, where a
Mm.
couple of years ago we were supporting these refugees, but now they're the ones standing there volunteering with me, giving back to the next round of people coming in or the next, group of people who need support. So it's a wonderful thing to see with these refugees coming to our country and giving back and doing the truly Canadian thing. And
Mhm.
it's really something to be proud of. I'm curious about your expectations around Canada. Like, what did you think of Canada before you got here? And then, you kind of mentioned your first kind of experiences, but
Mm.
what did you think of this country?
Um, I again, like I didn't have enough, I think, knowledge and information when I came here. That's why I say like it was the unknown to me because I didn't have expectations. I did hear a lot about how generous, supportive Canadians
Mm,
are, and I truly believe in that. It's so true. And it's something I feel when I go now. Like I was attending a global conference last week and I met a lot of people from across the globe. And I was so proud to talk about Canadians and their generosity in supporting not just refugees, but other underrepresented communities and supporting each other in Canada. So this is something definitely was expected, but I wanted to share something funny.
oh,
I remember because I came through this government program, so we had to meet a lot of people who work with Canadians who work in Canada when we were in Turkey. And I remember I had to meet with a group that told me something that made me or make me laugh all the time. And they told me, I was asking them about Canada, and they kept talking about the weather. Like it's cold and it's chill and it's like, very cold. And I expected that Canada to be cold, but they told me, and I remember one of the conversation was like, oh, actually in Canada, there is no sun. You don't see the sun. And that was scary to me living in Syria and in Turkey. Like, even though I'm
Welcome to
not
the
a big fan of
darkness.
the sun, but I was like,
Oh
really?
no.
Like how it's going to be? And I, after living few summers in Toronto, I was like, come on, like the sun. So yeah, that was something very fun. Yeah, like definitely the weather was something a lot of people told me about. But I think in general, like again, I didn't know what's happening, what's
Hmm.
waiting for me. I was worried because when I lived in Turkey as a refugee woman, I had a lot of limitations. Where to go, what to work, where to study, and what to say. Like having platforms like these to talk about my experience and others' experience. So it was very, I was worried. Like that's how I felt. But then after coming and working and receiving the support and the community, like I'm forever grateful. I feel like Canada met my expectations and beyond. And I think I have a duty, a commitment to do more, to empower other refugees to not only consider Canada their first home, but also to give back and to empower other communities coming here.
Well, you've empowered a lot of communities because
Yeah.
since you've arrived in this country, you've learned new languages. So you didn't know how to speak English. You learned English. I suspect you probably learned some French too.
I'm learning, yes.
Yes. And you were so keen to not only get settled, find your voice, and just be safe and feel safe, you were immediately inspired to give back. And you launched the BAM Collective. So BAM stands for Books, Art, and Music. Tell
Mhm.
me a little bit about what BAM is about and how it came to be.
Sure. So BAM, I also want to say that we're currently actually evolving. We're going to register soon as an organization. So our name may change, even though
Ooh.
I'm a big fan of the BAM, name. But it may be changing soon. But BAM is something I started back in 2018. And I think the inspiration behind starting BAM Collective came from my lived experience going through some hardships and challenges. I think it's important to know a lot of refugees, especially in their first 2 years, especially those with language barriers like me when I came, have to go through a lot of challenges when applying for jobs, when trying to being even involved in the community to volunteer and to give their time.
Mhm.
And I remember whenever I was trying to reach opportunities, I was always, asked to wait because it's not my turn. And I just felt like that was a pushback. I didn't want to wait because, I'm young, I have so much energy, and I just want to use this energy to do something. So that's why I started BAM Collective. And the reason was to not only provide opportunities for myself, because I did notice that other refugees, underrepresented communities like Indigenous folks and other equity deserving youth are also having hard times to access employment opportunities, to be in decision making, and to be involved in their communities or be encouraged to have a voice in community. So I started the collective, and our main objective is to support these communities and invest in them through arts, innovation, and policy, and community engagement. And I remember our first event was right before the 2019 federal election. I wasn't eligible to vote at that time because I didn't have a citizenship. But then we did, I wanted to do an event to empower people to learn about their right to vote while enjoy art and, connect. And I remember after that event, it was obviously a nonpartisan education event. We had one of the newcomers who recently got their citizenship came to me after a few weeks, and she was like, thank you for this event. We learned so much. And I actually casted my vote for the first time in my life. And that's where I knew I made an impact, and I decided to do more. And we're still running the collective. It's led by incredible community members, not
Mhm.
just refugees, again, Canadians from different backgrounds and experiences.
It's amazing because you found a way to connect various marginalized groups through
Mhm.
art. You go as far as talking about new immigrants, LGBTQ, Indigenous, like just bringing people together to connect over a common
Mhm.
passion and a common language of the arts, and also while having important conversations and empowering people and giving them a voice. So
Mhm.
I think it's incredible. I thought it was incredible when I first learned about it, and to watch it evolve. And I'm excited to see what it could potentially turn into next. But you also got behind another initiative recently called the Waard Ward,
Mhm.
um, which Ward, WAARD, if I understand, is from an
Yes,
Arabic word flower.
exactly. Word.
Okay. And you are basically empowering immigrants and refugees to train in floral design and open flower shops.
Mhm.
Okay. Talk
So
to me about that.
Yes, Waard Word is a very interesting collective as well. So this collective came to life when in 2019, my father and other community artists collaborated together on a workshop. My father is a florist, and because of
Mm.
the war, obviously the flower industry was heavily affected. And then being displaced, he had to lose his career. So coming here, having hardships to learn the language and integrate, we after collaborating on this workshop, we were like, let's come together and do something, not just to support my dad to work, but also to help other refugees who have similar hardships like language barrier and not able to find jobs. So we came together, and this collective is currently led by my parents and myself, and then other collective members and artists and community leaders, Patrina, Patricia, and Lori. And the six of us, we work together on not only hosting flower arrangement workshops and teaching new techniques. And my dad, where can he work and even teach in Arabic? But we're also supporting other refugees to learn new entrepreneurial skills and not only give back but also earn an income while they're learning
Mm.
these new techniques. So we've collaborated on exhibitions. We've done a lot of good community work, and we built community gardens. Like we have a Damascus rose garden in Thorncliffe,
Mm.
and we wanted to build this garden because we noticed a lot of Syrian newcomers are isolated. They wanted a sense of home, so we brought the Damascus rose and we planted it in the community. So now every summer they go and they smell it, and it just makes us feel like home. So we're doing a lot, and I'm so happy to be part of the Waard Ward Collective.
You're just so empowering in what you do. I suspect you didn't set out to be a leader in terms of the definition in your mind, or I'm going to lead, but you absolutely are leading not just one movement, but many movements. Do you see yourself as a leader?
It's, I think, as a woman, not just as a refugee, it's so hard to define ourselves as leaders because of
Hmm.
so many systemic challenges. But I've learned recently that yes, I'm a leader. I'm
Hmm.
doing so much and I'm leading by example. So yes, I do consider myself a leader. I think I should always admit it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Heck yes. Yes.
Yes.
I mean, it's one thing to inspire and empower, but to your point, you're leading by example. You're out there, you and your family, you're out there getting your hands dirty, literally
Yeah.
doing the work. And it's a beautiful thing. Talk to me a little bit about your work in the political realm. So you started the BAM Collective. You
Mhm.
obviously came over when you were a teenager. You're still in high school,
Mm.
but now you are studying in policy law. Talk to me a little bit about what you're doing right now and some of the experiences you've had in terms of some of your government advisory group work.
Absolutely. So in 2019, I started my undergrad at Toronto Metropolitan University, and I had a lot of debates about what to study. But then I got interested. I remember, like a conference that was a little bit political. And then I was like, you know what? I think I should be in politics because politics, everything in life is politics. This is something I believe in. But
Mhm.
also, I felt like politics has a lot of power when it comes to decision making. And I truly believe that, refugees and newcomers and women in general need to be in this political arena to create change. So I studied politics and governance in my undergrad, and then I applied for internships and I volunteered a lot. Even though I do consider when I got my first internship, I didn't have enough political experience, but I think I relied on my community experience because it's so important, it's so needed in government. And I was able to do this internship. And then from the internship, I remember in my second year in like full time studying in at the university, I was working full time as a regional advisor in government. So I worked at the Parliament Hill, and then I moved and I worked for the Minister's Regional Office as part of the Deputy Prime Minister Office. And in my role, I was advising, ministers and their teams on very interesting political issues. But a big part of my role was bridging gaps. And this is something I do in my work to
Mm.
bridge gap between government and ethnic communities and ensure that everyone has a voice at the table, not only, when we make decisions, but also when we co-design and implement and make investments and work on policies. So I've done a lot of that work. And currently I'm doing my master's in public policy administration at Law at York University. It's a very interesting program. It's part-time, but I think it's a way for me to learn more the law and the administration aspect of the politics as well. So I feel like it's definitely a new learning experience for me.
I mean, there's only 24 hours in a day. Did you even sleep with all these jobs and all this
Actually
schooling?
get like 8 hours of sleep, and people get shocked, but I try. I love sleeping, so yes.
I do too. I
Yeah,
do too.
yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, one of the topics that I know you're really passionate about is the idea of integrating refugee leaders into
Mhm,
decision-making roles,
mhm.
and, how businesses and governments, organizations can better support that. Talk to me about why you're so passionate about that.
I think it's for me, it's very important to include refugees and newcomers in decision making and leadership roles for many reasons. But one is because I think when we're co-designing or implementing policies that sometimes, to be honest, is completely directly connected to the refugees, if we're not involving them, then I don't think we're even successful. I think we're not meeting the exact needs that needed by these communities. So for me, it's important to always involve them. One, for their lived experience, because our lived experiences shape who we are. And I think it's important to have our voice heard. And I always say that as refugees, we have firsthand experiences, going through systemic challenges and discrimination and racism, unequal access to opportunities, and of course, like human disasters, like climate change, for example. So I feel whenever we're working on these important policies, our voice can be so much heard and so much needed. I also think refugees and newcomers bring so much value more than lived experience. And this is something we forget when it comes to decision making, that refugees are very skilled and talented people. And, because we had to be displaced, that does not mean our talents and, experiences could not be used in decision making. So I think we need to also reflect on that and work with refugees and newcomers as stakeholders, but also as partners and collaborators, more than like as clients.
Mm.
Because when we together work and co-design and implement and evaluate, I think that's where our policy or decision making is meeting the needs. Otherwise, I don't think it's an inclusive process.
It's such a strong point. I mean, oftentimes there are a lot of decisions being made behind
Mm,
closed doors
yeah.
to affect people that aren't even at the table. And we see this not just in government, we see this in communities, in large corporations, where the decision makers aren't necessarily
Mm,
connected to those who these decisions are potentially impacting. So it is important to have, and you talked about these amazing traits around resilience and having
mm,
to navigate all these challenges that refugees have been through, not to mention the fact showing up to a country and having to learn a language while establishing livelihood, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, just that skill set alone, I think, gives someone the credibility to be able to be at the table.
mhm,
Although it sounds like your experience has been very positive, and I think has a lot to do with how you've decided to engage with your experience. I think you have
mhm,
made your experience positive by how you've shown up and the decisions you've made. And um, what about some of the misconceptions or challenges, that maybe you have dealt with
mm,
as a refugee, which I think maybe are fueling some of your work,
yeah.
or that you're seeing in other people that you really want to continue to work towards rectifying?
Mm. Well, I think I mentioned it earlier. Like I, as a refugee, but I also say as a woman, as an Arab, as a Muslim woman, like there is always these things that I have to keep in mind.
Mhm.
I face, I think, a lot of challenges. I don't talk a lot about the challenges. I always talk about, I think, the good side because I'm comfortable talking about the good side. But I think it's important to reflect on the challenges we as women face in not only decision making, even in like being in our communities and working within our communities. I always get people who don't believe in my work, and I think it's generally common in women's experiences leading
Mhm.
initiatives and projects. So I have a lot of pushback from people who don't share the same views as mine, and even people who come directly from the community I serve, like even refugees as well. So I think it happens, and I think you get a lot of criticism, a lot of people who don't believe in your work, a lot of people who try to not push you more to do more. I think for me it was always to take this criticism, because I don't think it was taken as a feedback. It's usually coming as criticism, but take it as an opportunity to learn and grow, and that's how I shift my mindset. Like, yes, sure, I will listen, but I don't take it like personally. And I think I should always like improve and do better and find new pathways for me. So I've always dealt with that with, something I say, and I'm sure people heard me saying it. There is challenges in everything we do in life. But for me, once I start structuring my mind to say, okay, there is a challenge. So what could I do from this challenge? I've always took it as a learning opportunity to grow, to do better, and to believe better in myself. And I think that's my mindset whenever I have people challenging my work. And of course, I always get the same response that, you don't belong here. There is the
Mm.
racism and discrimination, and I identify as Canadian. I'm a very proud Canadian, and I'll always challenge people because I love this country. I give most of my time to Canada, and I will, because I truly believe Canada is the place that gave me the opportunities, the safety I need, but also the voice that I needed to, share with people.
It's so well said. And I think this idea of understanding our neighbor and having tough conversations. I mean,
Mm,
there's so many different people in this country who have come from so many
mm,
places. Now, let's not forget that this is a country that, yes, we have the indigenous who set the strong foundation for
yeah.
our amazing nation, but also this country was built on the backs of immigrants from all over the world. You know, I am the granddaughter of two Italian immigrants who built a lot of the major highways, who came to
Mm,
this country with a suitcase, who didn't speak English. My grandmother learned to speak English by watching The Young and Restless, which is a
yeah.
soap opera for people who aren't familiar, and which would be a very limiting vocabulary now that I
Mm,
think about it, very dramatic words. Um, but I just think sometimes we forget that we are a nation often built on a lot of immigrants from all over the world.
yeah.
And these days, I just feel like there's this heightened sensitivity around people that are
Mm,
different than us, right?
mm,
And I think maybe it's kind of coming up a little bit from our neighbors in the South, where, just because we have different political views, that we should not get along or that we should
mm,
not like each other. Like,
yeah,
whatever happened to having different views and just agreeing to disagree or
exactly.
seeking to understand? I think a lot of times things are based in ignorance. And you and I have talked about this. The
Yeah.
need for tough conversations is so important. And I know you're fostering important conversations with
Mhm,
government and policy and in the community.
mhm,
I have a podcast where I'm hoping to get people talking.
mm,
But it's also important to remember that this country is us. It's not our government, right?
mm,
How we are, how we show up, our culture, our policy, it's about the people. It's
mm,
about how we show up as neighbors in our
mm,
communities, as organizations, as businesses. We make up this country. And so that's our responsibility. So I'm so grateful, sorry, that you've decided to overcome the challenges.
mhm. And I'll always do. And I like how you put it. And also, like, dialogue, like, have dialogue, share stories, talk about stories.
Yes.
I always say to people, like, if you don't like something about myself, my community, my work, I'm willing to talk. Let's talk. Like, let's have a conversation, over coffee, over tea, over, I don't know, like, let's have a conversation and sit and talk. And I like that you said this country is not our government. It's more like
Mhm.
we, the people, like, we should all work together, collaborate together. I think we're all going through hardships, like each community, and we just need to start, remembering the Canada that we all know and look after each other.
It's so true. I mean, it takes work and it's so easy to point fingers and say they, instead of
Yes.
us need to work on this stuff. But it's small actions. It's
Mm,
stepping out and taking care of your neighbor and getting out involved in your community. And I'm so proud of the work you've done. You know, watched the BAM Collective grow and all these other initiatives grow. And your intention continues to be to empower people,
mm,
and you have become this incredible leader, but you've also built an army of leaders. So let's go back to that for a second, because this is a podcast about leadership, of course.
yes.
What do you think makes a great leader?
I think a great leader is someone who would, be open to collaborate,
Mm,
to do their tiny part, and foster, not just collaboration, but support and uplift people and lead by example.
I couldn't agree more. There is something about leadership that I think requires you to get your hands dirty in the
Yeah,
cause.
exactly.
I don't think there's any escaping it.
No.
And you have definitely gotten your hands dirty for sure.
Mhm.
Um, What about your experience in getting into politics? So you have obviously a very credible background now in social entrepreneurship as
Mm.
a community leader. How does that type of work inform how you show up in politics?
I think and that's why I mentioned at the beginning, when I started working in politics, I relied more on my community experience because I didn't have a lot of political experience. I think it's very important because at the end, you are in a very powerful decision making sphere where you have to kind of consult and make decisions and advise on very important things. So relying on your experience in community, understanding the community needs, collaborating with the community, and from an innovative perspective was very important for me. And I noticed that I did work a lot on the refugee stuff, but also on the gun violence, for example, in Toronto. And I
Mm.
felt like my community connection and the work that I've done in community before going in government was very helpful for me to go back and forth to amplify, not just, to amplify the investments and the opportunities, but also to ensure the communities were heard and were supported in the decision-making process. So it's very connected, I think, and it's very needed. And I'll take this platform to say that I hear a lot of young women like myself who said, I didn't have political experience, I cannot work in politics. Nope. If you do have community experience, volunteering experience, this is so much needed in government, and definitely go for it.
Yeah, it's such an important asset to have
Mhm.
that, that lifeline to the community, like
Yes.
that finger on the pulse. Like, what an incredible value add to be able to inform policy. What
Yeah.
are some of your most favorite causes?
Like the causes I got to work on in government.
Yeah, or things that you're passionate about in government.
I definitely enjoyed working a lot on like the refugee related policies. So, or like even I was very grateful to get opportunities to work even on international stuff. So, for example, when the earthquake happened in Syria and in Turkey, I remember I relied on my lived experience, on my community connection, and I was able to, host roundtables with ministers in the community, talk about the challenges and talk about the opportunities, but also ensure that we're co-designing and we're implementing programs and policies and immigration-related stuff based on the, conversations we're hearing from the community. So a lot of that, like refugee support and refugee integration. I'm very passionate about community safety, and that's why I mentioned the example of gun violence, especially living in Toronto. It's very close to all of us. It's impacting so many vulnerable communities and all communities. So I've done a lot of work on that, and I really, enjoyed being part of those conversations, even though they were sensitive, but they were very powerful. And lastly, I'll say, not, of course, women's and feminist approaches to our programming and investment was something I've dealt with and I'm very happy with. But the biggest piece of my work, not just in government, but beyond, is as a newcomer, as a refugee, to build more connections within Indigenous communities and encourage everyone to do their tiny part to work toward truth and reconciliation. This is something I've done at BAM, I've done in government, and I think I'll do throughout my career and journey in Canada.
It amazes me how someone who had to escape their home country just to be safe, just to survive, has come to this foreign country to ultimately make it her mission to take care of other people.
Yeah. And I'm someone who, always believed in collective responsibility.
Mm.
So I think it's something I have to do. And I think it comes kind of naturally because I did mention like growing up with my parents who always empowered me to get up and like work at a very young age and take care of each other's, and learn from people from different cultures and experiences
Mm.
and backgrounds. And I took that advice, and I think that taught me the importance of collaboration and taking care of each other. But also I think I feel it's an important need. It's a need for me, like to give, my time and do something, because if my community is not healthy, I'm not healthy, right? So I think it's that way. And that's why I think it's very important, even though I'm still healing from my war and refugee journey, but I think it's important for me to give back and to do my tiny part in Canada as well.
You're remarkable. You're absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
So, I want to talk about the praise and absolute deserving recognition that you've received for all the work that you've done. You've won Young Women in Leadership Awards. You won a UN Women Award, a prize for women and social leaders. I mean, I could go on and on. The 2023 Youth Award of the Year, Top 25 Canadian Immigrant Awards. I'm thrilled to see you're being recognized for the work that you do. And each time you get recognized, it creates a platform for you to spread the good that you do, to inspire more people to do as you do,
Mhm.
and for people to find you and leverage the good that you're doing to benefit themselves and set them on their own journey. So I want to congratulate you for all those awards. It's
Thank you.
incredible. Um, let's talk a little bit about what's next for you. I mean, you've done so much in your short time here in this country. What does life look like in the future? What are some items on your bucket list? What does the next chapter look like?
Thank you. And I think this is one of the hardest questions to answer. I usually don't answer like, where do you see yourself in 5 years, for example? But I could tell you that I'm currently focused on my studies for sure, like definitely interested in the program. And I just started this semester. So I guess in the next 2 years, I'll be, studying and learning more about law, administration, and public policy. I think my next journey, I'm excited to go back and hopefully work more in the public service and support Canadians. And of course, continue to see the evolving journey and transforming journey of BAM Collective and how we grow and where we become. But I think, yeah, a lot of that. And I think taking care of myself and my health, because I do, as someone who's so busy in community, forget that
Mhm.
sometimes. So reflecting on that and taking care of myself.
I'm glad you brought that up because all great leaders out there need to, take care of themselves first. We need them to do the good work
Mhm.
that they do, but that means they have to take care of themselves. So I agree. You should take care of yourself and put yourself first, as you have for so many other people.
Mhm.
Um, I'm curious about people who want to get more involved, and you kind of mentioned it, but if I'm out there listening and I do want to get more involved in public policy or in government or my community, where would you tell people to start?
I think to first identify the available resources to each person, because I think my experience is different than others, and I'm sure others have different experiences. So, first, identify the resources that are available and use them. And if they're not enough, definitely reach out to people. And I'm someone that you could reach out to me and ask for help and resources and tips as well. And I always say, and it seems easy, but it's not easy. I know it's difficult, it's hard sometimes, especially if you're an underrepresented woman or a recent newcomer woman. You see an opportunity or a resource and you try to go there, but most of the time the doors are closed for you. Challenge those doors, and if something is
Mm.
not created, create it yourself. You could build with small things something, and this is what I did with BAM Collective and other things. I would also say invest in yourself, like learn, study, improve your skills. It's so important. We always say, like, we reach a point that we think we're experts in so many things, but there is always opportunities to grow and learn. So I think this is very important. And never, doubt that you can't make it, because you can, even if you have less expertise. I'm sure there are other expertise that you could rely on to work in public service or in politics or in community. There is always an opportunity.
Well said. I agree. Sometimes you have to kick down doors
Yeah.
or pull up a chair to your own table, create
Mhm.
your own opportunities. I always say there's someone else out there like you. And as soon as you decide you're going to stand for something and do something, it's amazing how people come out of the woodwork. So,
Mhm.
if, like you said, if you can't be a part of something that already exists, then it's time to make your own thing. So,
And,
as you
and
did.
and it's like sometimes you do feel lonely in those spaces.
Mm.
I always encourage collaboration, like reach out to people and do definitely collaborate with others, because when you have a teammate, it's like it's much easier. Definitely and highly recommended.
I say it all the time. There's no trophy for going it alone. And I encourage people to reach out to people. Like the worst thing they're going to say is no. And in
Mhm.
fact, I find people often don't say no. Or if they say no, they put you in touch with someone who might say yes. So
Exactly.
I
Yes.
absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Are you up for some rapid fire questions?
Happy to.
All right.
Yeah.
So finish this sentence for me. To build a strong community, you must.
Empower yourself first, invest in yourself, and believe in the work that you're offering to the community.
I love that. It's such a strong message. I know we just talked about it, but
Mhm.
I know people use the word self-care and sometimes it gets lost in manicures, pedicures, and spa days. But
Mm,
self-care really is everything that encompasses empowering yourself and building yourself up to be able to better
exactly.
serve everybody else. So, whatever that means for you, and it can mean spa days. I love spa
Of
days. I'm not
course.
certainly
Yeah.
not against them,
Yeah. Me too.
but there are so many ways. Even when you talked about, educating yourself, just finding ways to empower yourself to be able
Mm,
to give back. I think that's a really, really important one. What
absolutely.
is your favorite thing about Canada?
Wow. So many things. But I think the favorite thing about Canada is that I could be myself.
Hmm.
That's a very unique, I think, experience, very unique thing that a lot of people don't have. And I'm very grateful for that.
There are very few people in this country who have to worry about being themselves. I
Exactly.
mean, perhaps I'm overgeneralizing, but the reality is,
Mm,
waking up, leaving our homes as a
mm,
woman, we don't have to worry about our safety for showing up and being ourselves. So I think
mhm,
that's an amazing thing. What about
mhm.
your favorite Canadian food?
Oh my God. Now you're making it more harder. I really like poutine. I love it. I was in Montreal last week. I ate so much and it's just like the best. And I was telling every person I met from outside Canada, this is what you have to eat. This is what you have to. Even though, like, again, Canadian food is so diverse and I eat all kind of diverse foods, but I feel like it's a very, like, it's just like the texture is so good and I really enjoy it. And I love fries in general. So yeah.
Fair, fair.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the first thing we're going to disagree on because I do not like poutine. And I don't
No.
even say it out loud because I'm afraid my citizenship's going to be revoked because I'm not even a big fan of hockey. So it's like a
Oh my God.
double strike
Oh.
against me. Like one more thing and I'm out of this country. But yeah,
Well, I'm not gonna tell anybody.
no, please don't tell. I like French fries, but I like them with like lots of vinegar. That's how I want
Oh,
to eat my French
like
fries.
that,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I won't hold it against you. I still adore
Okay,
you. So it's okay.
great.
What is your favorite hobby, your pastime when you're not out there doing all this good?
I like taking pictures, and recently I started to
Oh,
practice photography. I'm not still a great photographer, but I like taking pictures in general. Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah,
Capture all these wonderful memories that you're making.
love it. Yeah.
What are some words of wisdom that you wish you could go back and share with your teenage self, maybe before coming to Canada or when you got to Canada? What do you think your teenage self could have benefited from hearing?
I really think. Oh, you know what? I feel like I'm repeating what Jim said because I did watch Jim's
It's
episode.
okay.
Don't rush. And I think for me, I would say, like, you could still make it. Take care of your health. Take care of your body. And there is, yeah, no, no hurry, like no rush. Take your time.
It's true. I definitely rushed as well.
Yeah.
And my parents were trying so hard to slow me down. And I took it as I was offended because I was like, but I'm mature. I can do all this. I can
Yeah.
handle all this. But I didn't understand they were just forcing me to
Slow
enjoy
down.
being a child,
Yeah.
right? For as long as I could, because eventually once that's gone, that's
And
gone.
then you
So
start regretting. And I feel like I started doing
yeah.
that after. I'm like, I wish. And now I'm
Yeah.
like, actually, I'm grateful where I am now. But
Yes.
I think, yeah, like if I go a few years back, I would definitely remind myself to slow down, take it, step by step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. All right. Finish this sentence. Great leaders must.
Listen, uplift, empower, and lead by example again.
Great advice.
Yeah.
Takes one to know one. Look at you.
Yes.
How many languages do you speak?
Well, my first is Arabic.
Okay.
English, I learned it here. I did used to speak fluent Turkish, but I'm forgetting it. But I would say a little bit of Turkish, and I'm learning French as well.
Wow. Can
Yeah.
you teach me something in Arabic?
Shukran. Shukran means thank you. And I
Shukran.
wanted to say this because this is an incredible conversation. I just feel so good about it.
Well, thank you.
Shukran.
Shukran. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm going to teach that to my kids too. They love learning new words. It also replaces all the ridiculous words that they have in their
Of
vocabulary
course.
that I require a dictionary to understand. But that's a totally different episode. Um, I am certain that one day there will be a biopic about your life. And if you had to choose the actress that will play you, who would it be?
Uh, you know what? I'm not a big TV films person. I did ask my partner one day, and
Oh,
he
yeah.
said Emma Stone, so I would go with
Ooh,
Emma Stone.
yeah.
That's a
That's a
big
good
shot,
choice.
but I love her work. Yeah.
She's very diverse in her skill set, and
Very,
there's something very wholesome about her. So I
very
like that.
talented
That's a
as
good
well.
choice. Oh
Yes.
gosh, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah, it's a big.
So if people want to find you and follow you, all the good work that you do, you're always putting out so much great content. I know I follow you on LinkedIn and the BAM Collective. Where is the best place for people to find you?
I'm pretty active on social media, so
Yeah.
definitely LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, you name it, everywhere. And people can always reach out. And on LinkedIn, I'm happy to share my email and connect for sure.
Amazing. So we'll put all your links and handles in the notes. I just want to say thank you. It is so good to see you. I am so I don't want to say proud because I don't want it to sound condescending or demeaning, but I'm proud of you. And I'm proud that I got to meet you and I got to know you and be part of a tiny, tiny part of your journey. I encourage people to go back and watch the Dream Team CBC series that you were on. What an amazing opportunity for you to showcase what you did and to inspire so many people. thank you. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me and for everything you're doing. And I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you so much, Marissa. And I want to say, I do remember something from the experience with the Dream Team, that the experience was actually to build a dream team. And you were part of the dream team that I was supposed to always connect with and, share with and learn from. And I do feel like it's still like the connection is still here. And I'm so grateful for this connection. And I am proud of your work and this podcast. And thank you for inviting me. It's just such a privilege. And I look forward to hearing more stories here.
Likewise, I enjoy watching your journey, and hopefully we can inspire each other and collaborate in some way someday soon. I would really like that.
We will. Thank you,
Sounds
Marissa.
great. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.